A pastor just handed his church a letter admitting he knew about CSA allegations and did nothing. And then, a year later, the same guy struck again. And the pastor still didn't connect the dots. For 15 years. Let's talk about it. Dustin Pennington was the lead pastor of GateCity Church in Lawrenceville, Georgia, a congregation with ties to the International House of Prayer Kansas City network, which has been drowning in its own SA scandal for a while now. We'll come back to that connection. On April 19th, a Sunday service at GateCity started like many others. Worship, community, people gathering. And then the church director, Billy Humphrey, got up and told the congregation something they were not prepared to hear. Their pastor was resigning. Not because of burnout, not because of a new calling. Because 15 years ago, he was told a volunteer in his previous church was SAing young ones, and he did nothing about it. Now, before I get into the analysis, here is how Billy made the announcement and the actual letter Pennington wrote to his church as it was read to the congregation. Because his own words are the most important thing here. This is real. This is what he said.
So I need to transition this moment into an important announcement and a leadership transition that we're making. And it's not lost on me that we had this message planned 6 weeks ago, and we have to address something that's come to our attention in the last couple weeks. And so I'm going to make an announcement and share some details, and then we will dismiss, and then we're going to immediately have a time of church family where we can talk about this announcement that I'm making. And I ask the elders to come join me on the stage, and Mary Beth, if you come as well. And so I'm going to get to the point. Dustin Pennington, our lead pastor, has resigned as the pastor of GateCity Church. And it's not because he's had any kind of a moral failure personally or anything of that nature, but what's come to light is that he improperly handled a report of sexual misconduct involving a minor in 2011 while he was the senior pastor of Cornerstone Assembly. And so at that time, Dustin was presented with allegations of an individual's sexual misconduct involving minors, and he did not report the information or bring it forward to others. He believed the report to be false. A year later, that individual in question harmed a young adult at Cornerstone. While that misconduct was addressed, the earlier disclosure, what Dustin had been told and failed to report, was not brought to light until this past 2 weeks. And so once this full picture came forward, Dustin shared the details with our eldership. Our elders began to carefully confirm and vet the details of the situation. And after we all talked it through, talked with Dustin, we all recognized the seriousness of that past decision as a breach of judgment and trust. Dustin took full ownership, and he offered his resignation. He actually offered it to me 4 different times, and finally on the 4th time I said yes. And this is a deeply sad and difficult situation for the Pennington family, but Dustin has handled it honorably by taking responsibility. And in the same way, our eldership and our board are handling this with clarity and transparency and adherence to our processes. So this is a painful moment, and the outcome is painful, but it's one that we all feel is the right decision. And so our hope and our desire, as is the desire for the Penningtons, is that after a season of reflection and a time of restoration, that they'll be back in fellowship with us here at GateCity. They are not being excommunicated or anything of that nature, but that they'll be a part of our spiritual family. And I just want to add that we don't believe this is a permanent removal from all ministry forever or something of that nature. We think it's an appropriate moment for them to step back and to resign, and we are committed to walking with them through this challenging time. With that, I want to read Dustin's letter to our congregation, and then our pastors and our elders will be available for prayer, and we will dismiss formally, and then we will start right back at about 11:35, and we'll have a time of common questions for anybody who would like to stay and process for a few moments. Our children's ministry is prepared to keep our children till noon, and so we're doing this within the normal time that they would have already been there. And so I'm going to read this letter from Dustin. To the GateCity family, on March 29th, 2026, information was brought to my attention that caused me to revisit and re-examine a portion of my pastoral history with fresh clarity and sobriety. In doing so, I was reminded of a meeting in 2011 that I had not carried in active memory. In that meeting, serious allegations of sexual misconduct involving minors were shared with me regarding a volunteer in our church, Cornerstone Assembly of God. At the time, I did not give those concerns the weight and discernment they required and did not pursue them as I should have. I was aware that this individual had some moral struggles in previous years and had walked through a process of restoration, which contributed to my misplaced confidence in him. In 2012, this individual engaged in sexual misconduct involving a young adult in our church. At the time, I did not connect this incident with earlier allegations from 2011. The individual was removed from ministry responsibilities at Cornerstone Assembly of God, and I addressed the situation based on what I understood at the time. In 2017, information came to light that clarified for me the seriousness of the earlier concerns. I took immediate action to address what was then known. Until March 29th this year, I had come to a place of relative peace regarding how everything had unfolded. However, upon being reminded of that 2011 meeting, the full weight of the situation became clear to me. I recognized that I failed to respond to serious allegations and failed to connect critical information over time. This represents a significant lapse in judgment in a role that carries deep trust and responsibility. For this, I am deeply sorry, especially to those who were directly impacted by my failure to act. After prayer, counsel, and careful consideration, I believe that it is right for me to step down from serving as the lead pastor of GateCity Lawrenceville. This decision is my own. Michelle and I are heartbroken. This church has been our life, our calling, and one of our greatest joys. To step away from it in this way is deeply painful. I grieve the pain this brings to those who were affected and to this church family. You deserve leadership that exercises the highest level of discernment and care, and I acknowledge that I fell short of the standard required for pastoral leadership. I want you to know that I love you, I love this house, and I have deep confidence in the leadership of Gate City. I believe the Lord will continue to guide and strengthen this church, and that you will move forward into all that He has for you. With love and sincerity, Dustin Pennington. I know that that is a shocking announcement, and that it's difficult for many in our congregation. It's difficult for us, our eldership, and it's been a very trying last couple weeks.
Okay, so let's slow down and actually walk through what that letter is saying, because there's a lot buried in it, and I think some of it is being glossed over. First, he says he was reminded of a 2011 meeting he had not carried in active memory. That's a very careful phrase. He's saying he forgot. And I want to be fair here. Human memory is imperfect, and we've all let things fall through the cracks. But this wasn't a minor administrative oversight, or this was allegations of CSA. That's not the kind of meeting most people just forget. Second, and this is critical, he says in 2012, the same individual committed sensual misconduct against a young adult in his church, and he did not connect this incident with the earlier allegations from 2011. Think about what that means. He's describing a pattern he was positioned to see and didn't, or didn't want to. Because in 2011, he'd already decided the guy had walked through a process of restoration. He'd already made up his mind. So when the 2012 incident happened, instead of going, wait, didn't I hear something about this person before? He just handled it in isolation and moved on. That's not just a lapse of memory. That's a pattern of giving the benefit of the doubt to the wrong person. Now here's where things get legally significant, and where Pennington's letter stops being just a personal apology and starts being potentially a criminal matter. In Georgia, mandatory reporting law, specifically OCGA, Section 1975, requires certain people, including anyone working with or supervising children, to report suspected CSA immediately. Not eventually. Not after prayer and counsel. Immediately. The law says within 24 hours. This law was in effect in 2011. It was in effect in 2012. It applied not just to licensed professionals, social workers, teachers, doctors, but to anyone in an organization responsible for children's care or supervision, which includes, by most reasonable readings, a pastor overseeing a church volunteer program. Failure to report? That's a misdemeanor under Georgia law. Now, whether Pennington legally qualified as a mandatory reporter in that specific context, whether the allegations met the legal threshold of reasonable cause, whether the statute of limitations has run, those are questions for a prosecutor, not a YouTube commentator. But what the church's own documents confirm is that his admitted inaction places him squarely inside the framework of that reporting requirement. He knew. In 2011. He didn't report. That's his own letter. Dustin Pennington's letter is, on its surface, a confession. He admits fault. He uses the word failed. He expresses grief. And I don't doubt that some of that is genuine. But grief without accountability isn't justice. An apology to the congregation isn't the same as accountability to the victims. And resigning from a pastorate isn't the same as facing legal or institutional consequences for failing to protect children. The victims in this story, the minor in 2011 whose allegations were dismissed, the young adult in 2012 who was harmed, they don't get a letter. They don't get a Sunday announcement. And they get to watch the man who failed them described as someone who fell short and may be restored to ministry. The question this story keeps raising isn't just about Dustin Pennington. It's about the structures that make men like him possible. The cultures where a pastor's reputation gets weighed against young one's safety, and the reputation wins. Every time. That's the story. That's what we should be talking about. If you found this video useful, share it. This kind of reporting deserves more eyes on it. See you in the next one.